Good evening and welcome. Let's start with our top story. Representatives from NATO, its 30 member states, and the Russian Federation are all set to meet in Brussels to discuss Moscow's buildup on the Ukrainian border. The meeting could possibly be one of the most significant and defining moments in relations between NATO and Russia since the breakup of the Soviet Union. Now, ahead of the crucial meeting with Russia, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg warned Russia of high political and economic price in case it launches any offensive against Ukraine. Meeting the Ukrainian Deputy Prime Minister, Stoltenberg added that the alliance backs Kiev's right to defend itself.
Any further aggression against Ukraine would come at a high political and economic price. NATO allies are united in their support for all nations to choose their own path.
The NATO chief added that security negotiations between the two sides may not resolve all issues, but could provide a pathway to avoid conflict. Now, Russia-NATO talks come just a day after the United States' negotiations with the Russian side. Last month, Russia presented its demands, including a ban on NATO's expansion to the east and an end to NATO's activities in Central and Eastern European countries that joined it after 1997. NATO allies immediately dismissed Moscow's demands, calling them a non-starter. In a briefing earlier today with Stoltenberg, the Ukrainian Deputy Prime Minister said that Russia's demands to allies cannot be considered as a negotiating position and that the aggressor cannot be in a position to set conditions.
We should all realize that Russia's demands to allies could not be considered as a negotiating position. Aggressor is not in a position to put conditions until the Russian tanks is out of Ukrainian border. We see as Russia attempts to shift the discussion by threatening with a new war without moving any step forward peaceful settlement within Minsk and Normandy formats. What Russia is doing is tries to impose its agenda instead of returning to the negotiation table.
The recent escalation near Ukrainian borders has sparked fears of a repeat of 2014, when Russian forces forcibly annexed the Black Sea Peninsula of Crimea and backed separatists in eastern Ukraine. Russia's act triggered questions over the West's incapability to stand up to Russia. Since then, the ties between Russia and the West have been worsening, almost reaching Cold War level lows. Now, the NATO-Russia Council, founded in 2002 for the cooperation between the two sides, has not met in over 2 years. The NATO allies have made it clear that the upcoming diplomatic talks could see progress only if it is a two-way street, with Russia de-escalating its aggression towards Ukraine. Now, for more on the story, our correspondent Susan Teherani is joining us live from New York. Hello to you, Susan. Thank you for being with us. Now, Blinken and NATO say that talks are unlikely to resolve issues. What should we expect from the meeting now? More talks, more phone conversations between Putin and Biden?
Right. It seems that according to the Kremlin and according to the U.S. side, quote unquote, talks, both sides are open to negotiations, despite the fact that the Kremlin spokesman just a few hours earlier, as these negotiations were taking place, said that there are no concrete plans for President Biden and Vladimir Putin to hold formal talks as of yet. However, knowing how the Biden administration wants to keep diplomatic channels open in this regard, we probably will see that moving forward. And we also know that Russia will be talking to NATO member states, and then after that, later on in the week, Ukraine is going to be at the table as well. So it is going to be a week-long negotiation with the European side as well. 8 hours of talk between Wendy Sherman and the Russian side really resulted in a similar statement between the two sides. I think that's noteworthy, and perhaps it creates sort of a pathway that what we didn't know a few hours ago, and we were uncertain on where these talks or where these relations would move forward, maybe it does create a path forward that these talks and negotiations will continue. I do want to say that there was a quote on the part of on the Russian side that said that while they said that they don't plan, they don't have concrete plans on invading Ukraine, but do not, quote, underestimate the risk of a confrontation. But they also said that the situation was not, quote unquote, hopeless.
Right. Susan, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much for bringing us all the latest details there.
WION, now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.